He walked in early and saw his black maid cradling all three of his babies like they were hers, barefoot, smiling, rocking them to sleep, and for a second, he couldn't even breathe. Michael Hudson didn't cry at the funeral. Not when they lowered the coffin. Not when his mother-in-law collapsed at the gravesite. Not even when the triplets, barely 3 days old, let out shrill, confused cries as if they somehow knew their mother was gone. He just stood there, cold, silent, broken. It had only been 3 months, but the man who once filled Forbes magazine covers with his toothy, confident grin now lived in a house that echoed like a mausoleum. His home was silent. No lullabies, no baby giggles, no footsteps, just feeding schedules he didn't follow, baby monitors he kept turned off, and a nursery he hadn't stepped foot into since the day Jennifer died giving birth. Stella Ray didn't need instructions. She just knew. She knew what formula brand the babies hated and what silly noise made Jonah stop crying mid-scream. She knew Lila liked being swaddled tighter than the others and that Leo loved humming sounds. But most of all, she knew what it meant to love children who'd never remember their real mother. Stella was 25, smart, patient, gentle, and completely invisible in Michael's world. Hired 6 weeks before Jennifer went into labor, she had barely spoken 10 words to the billionaire himself. All instructions came through assistants, nannies, or emotionless text messages. But when Jennifer died, everyone else left. Stella stayed. Every morning at 6:15 a.m., Michael left for work, and every morning Stella stood in the hallway barefoot in her soft cotton uniform, rocking one baby on her shoulder, another in her arms, and the third snuggled into the sling she tied around her waist. No one asked her to. No one watched. She just loved them. That Friday, Michael had boarded a private jet for a 3-day trip to Dubai. Business, deals, distraction. But halfway there, the meeting was cancelled. His assistant gave the green light to return. Weather was good, jet refueled. He landed 2 hours later, stepped into the house with barely a sound, briefcase in hand. There was no staff, no noise, and then he heard it. A soft humming, a lullaby, faint, coming from the nursery. He walked up the stairs slowly, quietly, and when he opened the nursery door, he froze. There she was, Stella, sitting on the floor, surrounded by warm light from the window, her shoes off, her hair pulled back in a loose braid. Leo rested against her chest, fast asleep. Lila clutched her finger, cooing softly. Jonah giggled as she kissed his tiny toes. She didn't see him. She was too lost in it, mothering, smiling, loving. Michael's heart slammed against his ribs. His breath caught. For the first time in months, he felt something real. But he didn't know if it was rage or relief. If you were Michael, walking in and seeing that, what would you feel first? Gratitude? Jealousy? Fear? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Michael didn't say a word. He just stood there in the doorway, frozen, staring at something that shouldn't have felt so threatening, a woman holding his children. But it wasn't just the act. It was how she held them. So natural, so full, so maternal. For a flicker of a second, he saw Jennifer. Or maybe, what Jennifer never got the chance to become. His throat tightened. Leo stirred in Stella's arms, and only then did she notice him. Her eyes widened. Her lips parted. "Mr. Hudson," she started, shifting to stand, but Jonah was wrapped around her leg. Michael's voice cut through the nursery, low, uneven. "What are you doing?" Stella blinked. "Just soothing them. They missed their morning nap." He stepped in. "So you thought lying on the floor barefoot with all 3 of them draped over you was appropriate?" Stella's face went pale. "I didn't mean, sir, they were crying and I—" Michael's eyes darted to the babies, peaceful, sleeping, clinging to her like she was home. His tone cracked. "You shouldn't. You can't just—" He stopped, because the truth was, he didn't know what the rule was. He hadn't held his children since Jennifer's death, hadn't kissed them, rocked them. He didn't even know what their cries meant anymore. But she did, and that realization hit like a punch to the chest. He turned away abruptly, walking out without another word. Stella stayed there, frozen, the weight of the babies pressing down, but not nearly as heavy as the weight in her chest. Hours passed. Michael didn't leave the house again. He sat in his office, staring at the wall, flashes of that image seared into his mind. The softness in Stella's voice, the way Jonah giggled, the way Lila tucked into her neck like it was the safest place on earth. He should have felt grateful. Instead, he felt replaced by a maid. That night, he hovered outside the nursery again. He wasn't sure why. Inside, Stella was singing softly, laying each baby into their crib with a kind of reverence he hadn't seen in months. Before she turned off the lamp, she brushed a gentle kiss across Leo's forehead. Michael flinched. That kiss used to be Jennifer's. Now it belonged to someone else. And for the first time since the funeral, Michael Hudson cried. He didn't sob, didn't shake. Just stood there in the hallway, alone in the dark, finally feeling something. If this story has already made you feel something real, don't just scroll by. Hit that subscribe button. Michael avoided her the next day. He left early, even though he had no meetings, just drove around the city with nowhere to be. But no matter how far he went, that image followed him. Stella on the nursery floor, barefoot, holding his babies like they were her own. It wasn't just her presence. It was the absence of Jennifer in everything now, and that scared the hell out of him. Back at the mansion, Stella moved like a ghost. She didn't hum like she usually did, didn't sing during bath time or whisper her silly animal stories during diaper changes. She just did her job, quietly, professionally. But the babies noticed. Jonah cried more. Lila refused her nap. Leo wouldn't settle. Still, she didn't cross the line again. Not after what happened. Not after that look on Michael's face. That evening, Michael returned late. His tie was loose, his eyes heavy. He passed Stella in the hallway. She paused. Her lips parted like she might say something, but he didn't stop. He walked right past her. In the kitchen, he opened a bottle of scotch he hadn't touched since the funeral, poured one finger, then another and another. His hand trembled slightly. Why did it bother him so much? Wasn't that what he paid her for? To feed them, hold them, keep them safe. But that wasn't what he saw. What he saw was something no salary could buy. Love. A few hours later, he found himself standing outside the nursery again. The light was off. He pushed the door open softly. Inside, Stella sat by the cribs, just watching the babies sleep. She didn't move. Neither did he. The silence stretched between them, thick, fragile, complicated. Finally, he broke it. "You're not just doing your job," he said flatly. Stella turned slowly. "Excuse me?" He stepped inside. "Yesterday, you weren't just putting them to sleep. That was something else." Her voice was low, calm. "They needed comfort." "And you gave it," he replied, his tone tightening. "Like their mother would." She flinched. "Because their mother isn't here." The words landed like a slap in the room. Michael's jaw clenched. "I didn't ask for that." Stella stood, holding back the tremor in her voice. "No, Mr. Hudson, you didn't." "But they did." Silence again. A full beat passed. Then she walked out, brushing past him without another word. Michael stood alone, staring into the crib, where Jonah stirred slightly, curling toward the empty space where Stella had just been. He didn't know if he was angry at her, or angry at himself, maybe both. The storm started around 3 p.m. Dark clouds rolled in fast, swallowing the Los Angeles sun. Thunder rumbled like a warning. By 5:30 the roads were flooded, flights grounded, power flickering. Stella stood in the hallway, holding Jonah in one arm and her phone in the other. "No signal," she muttered. She wasn't supposed to be working tonight, her first evening off in weeks. But the relief nanny called in sick and the storm made it impossible to leave. Michael appeared at the top of the stairs, shirt sleeves rolled up. "Phone
You can't
dead."
get out,
he said, voice flat. She nodded. "I figured." "You'll need to stay the night." Stella hesitated. I can sleep in the nursery." "No," he said, sharper than intended. Then he softened. "I mean, it's fine. You can use one of the guest rooms." A long silence stretched between them, thick with everything unsaid. By 9 p.m., the power went out completely. Michael lit a fire in the main room while Stella set up the baby monitors, one eye on the storm outside, the other on the sleeping triplets. They ended up in the same room, not by choice, but because neither could pretend things were normal anymore. Stella sat on the floor, arms around her knees. Michael sat on the edge of the couch, staring into the fire like it might give him answers. "You're good with them," he said finally. Stella looked up. "They're easy to love." His jaw clenched. "It scares me how fast they took to you." She didn't say anything. "They don't even look for me," he added, his voice cracking. Stella looked down at her hands. "Because you haven't given them a reason to." His head snapped toward her, eyes sharp. She didn't flinch. "I don't mean that cruelly. I just mean that they don't know you." A beat, then another. Michael looked back at the fire. "I don't know them either." The wind howled outside. The fire popped. "I see Jennifer in them," he whispered. "Too much. It hurts." Stella's voice was soft. "I know." "No, you don't," he said quickly, then paused. "Actually, maybe you do." He looked over at her, really looked. "You lost someone too, didn't you?" Stella's eyes flickered. "My mum. Cancer. 2 years ago." Silence again. And somehow that silence was different now. Not avoidance, not tension. Just shared pain. Real. Raw. Human. The fire dimmed. The clock ticked. Michael didn't move away when Stella slowly rested her back against the couch near his feet, and for the first time since Jennifer died, he didn't feel alone. The fire had burned low. The storm still raged outside, but inside the mansion, it was eerily calm. Michael hadn't moved from the couch. Stella was still on the floor beside him, knees tucked to her chest. They weren't talking anymore, but neither of them had left. A soft cry echoed from the baby monitor. Then another. Michael stood first. "I'll go." Stella blinked in surprise. "You sure?" He nodded. "I should at least try." He returned 20 minutes later, hair slightly messy, his dress shirt dotted with spit up. "She threw up on me," he muttered. Stella chuckled gently. "That's Lila. She's got perfect aim." Michael cracked a smile, tiny but real. "I didn't know how to burp her." Stella stood, walking toward him. "You want me to show you?" He nodded, and just like that, they were shoulder to shoulder, facing the nursery again. As Stella gently guided his hand placement, their fingers brushed. Neither pulled away. "She liked when Jennifer sang," Stella said quietly. "Back when I started here, Jennifer, she sang all the time." Michael looked down. "Yeah, she did. I used to listen through the door," Stella continued, smiling faintly. "It was like your whole house was alive." He swallowed hard. "Then it died with her." Stella looked at him. "No," she said softly. "You did." The room fell silent again. Michael sat down on the nursery rocker. "Jennifer wanted 5 kids." Stella smiled. "She told me that. She had names picked out, matching Christmas pajamas, a plan for everything. She was warm," Stella whispered, "and kind." Michael's voice trembled. "She wasn't supposed to die. I mean, I knew it was high risk, but I thought we'd get lucky." "She didn't die because of you," Stella said gently. He looked up. "Didn't she?" That silence again. Then Stella sat beside him, her voice barely above a whisper. "My mum. She worked 2 jobs. She got sick, but she kept working. Didn't tell me. I missed it. She didn't want to burden me." Her eyes shimmered. "By the time I found out, it was too late." Michael's breath hitched. "She died in my arms," Stella said, "and every day I wonder if I should have seen it coming." He met her gaze, and for the first time, they weren't just employer and maid. They were 2 people with the same kind of guilt, the same kind of grief, wearing different names. Why do you stay? He asked suddenly. You could work anywhere. Stella exhaled. Because they need someone who won't leave. Michael looked down. And me? Stella hesitated, then answered honestly. You need someone who won't be afraid of the ghosts in this house. At this point, if you're still watching, you're invested. You care. And I see you. So do me one favor. Subscribe, and let's finish this journey together. The next morning, the storm had passed, but neither of them moved quickly. Michael poured coffee in the kitchen for both of them. Black for him. 2 sugars and oat milk for her, just how Jennifer used to take it. He handed it to Stella without a word, and she blinked in surprise. You remembered? He shrugged. I pay attention. Sometimes. She smiled softly, brushing a loose braid behind her ear. In the nursery, Lila laughed for the first time in days. Jonah clapped. Leo gurgled. Michael watched from the doorway, no longer distant, just uncertain. He stepped in. May I? Stella raised her brow, surprised again. You want to hold one? Maybe 2, he said. She handed him Leo, adjusting his arms. Support the head. I've seen movies, he said dryly. Stella chuckled. That means nothing. Sit down. He eased into the rocking chair. Leo snuggled into his chest, warm and soft. Jonah reached out from his crib, whining for attention. Okay, Michael muttered. Now they're multiplying. Welcome to my world, Stella teased, sitting beside him on the floor. It was quiet, but real. A few hours later, Stella was in the backyard hanging the baby's tiny laundry to dry under the sun. Michael stepped outside, watching her work in the gentle breeze. You don't use the dryer? He asked. They smell better this way, she said without looking at him. Like sunshine and love. He blinked. That was exactly what Jennifer used to say. He walked over, picked up a onesie, and clipped it beside hers. Stella turned, surprised again. You hanging laundry now? He shrugged. Don't get used to it. They both laughed again, then fell into silence. But it wasn't awkward. It was comfortable. Warm. Later, as the babies napped, they sat outside under the porch. No fire, no storm, just wind in the trees. You know, Michael said suddenly, last night was the first time I didn't dream about the hospital. Stella looked at him, quiet. I dreamt I was in this house, he continued. Jennifer was singing, but I couldn't see her face. It was just peaceful. Stella's voice was soft. Maybe that was her letting go. He nodded slowly, then looked at her. Maybe it was me letting go. Their eyes locked. Neither moved, but something was moving between them. It wasn't physical, not yet, but it was there. Undeniable. Something alive. Something possible. It happened 2 days later. The peace, the laughter, the fragile rhythm they had started to build. It all cracked with one overheard phone call. Stella was folding clothes in the laundry room when she heard Michael's voice down the hall. Low, sharp, tense. I know it's too soon, but I have to move forward. Yes, the babies need someone long-term, someone they can see as family, not just staff. A pause. Stella froze. Look, she's great with them. That's not the problem. Another pause. Then, she's getting too comfortable. Stella's throat went dry. Another voice, faint over speakerphone. You mean emotionally involved? Michael's sigh was heavy. Exactly. She didn't hear the rest. Didn't need to. She turned, eyes burning, hands shaking as she crumpled a tiny sock in her palm. When he came down for dinner that night, she didn't look at him, didn't speak, didn't smile. He noticed. Everything okay? He asked gently. She didn't answer. Only after clearing the table did she finally say, Don't worry, I'll fix it. Michael blinked. Fix what? She turned to him, eyes sharp. I didn't mean to get too comfortable. I didn't realize loving your children was a problem. His face dropped. What are you talking about? That call, she said coldly. You said I was too emotionally involved. that I was just the help, staff, a problem. Michael stood, stunned. You heard that? She folded her arms. You weren't exactly whispering. That's not what I meant. She cut him off. No, you meant exactly that. You meant I crossed a line, got too close, acted like their mother when I was supposed to be invisible. His voice rose. You're twisting this. I gave everything to them, she snapped. I gave them my heart. And maybe that was stupid, because clearly I'm just one more disposable piece of your grief puzzle. Michael's hands clenched at his sides. Don't do that. Why not? She shot back. Because you might feel something again and it scares you. He didn't answer, didn't fight, didn't deny it, and that silence said everything. She turned and walked out, the sound of her footsteps echoing through the hallway like thunder. Later that night, Michael walked past the nursery. She wasn't there. The babies were quiet. But everything felt colder, empty, like before her. He sat on the edge of his bed, head in his hands, and for the second time in a week, Michael Hudson cried. But this time, he knew exactly why. Stella didn't sleep that night. She lay on the cot in the guest room, eyes wide open, the soft hum of the baby monitor flickering beside her. Every sound in the house seemed louder, every cry more distant. She'd already packed most of her things, folded them quietly, between sobs. Tomorrow, she would leave. There was no formal notice, no angry goodbye, just silence. She had loved them, all four of them, and it wasn't enough. In the master bedroom, Michael sat on the edge of the bed again. Same spot, same ache. But this time, something was different. He looked around the room, at Jennifer's photo still perched on the nightstand, at the untouched bottle of perfume, at the hospital discharge forms he never had the courage to throw away. And then, he whispered, I don't know how to do this without you. But there was no answer, only the realization that Jennifer was gone, and Stella, the one person who had brought this home back to life, was slipping away too. Because of him. He didn't sleep either. At 4:47 a.m., he got up, walked to the nursery, and found Lila fussing in her crib. He picked her up, awkwardly but gently, and sat in the rocker. He cradled her, rocked her, held her close. She settled almost immediately. His chest tightened. I'm sorry, he whispered, not just to the baby, but to all of them. By 7 a.m., Stella was downstairs, suitcase at her feet. Michael found her near the front door. The sun lit her face in streaks through the curtains. She looked like she hadn't slept. Neither had he. She didn't speak. He did. Don't go. She shook her head slowly. It's not my place to stay. It should be, he said, stepping closer. I was scared. I still am. But not of you. She looked up, eyes red. Then what? Of feeling something again, of letting go of her, of replacing someone I promised I'd never forget. You're not replacing her, Stella said softly. You're choosing to live again. There's a difference. He nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. I messed up, he said, but I meant what I said the other night. This house was dead until you brought it back to life. She blinked, and for a moment, neither of them moved. I'm not asking for anything, he continued. Not a relationship, not forgiveness. Just don't walk away. Don't take the only real warmth these babies know with you. She hesitated. And what about you? He smiled, just barely. I'm asking for the same. Stella didn't answer right away. Her hand was still on the suitcase handle. The babies were still asleep upstairs. The sky outside was soft with morning gold. I don't know how to come back from this, she said quietly. Michael nodded. Then we don't go back. We go forward. Her eyes met his. He wasn't the cold, grieving billionaire anymore. Not in that moment. He was just a father. A man. Standing in front of the one person who had shown him how to breathe again. They didn't hug. Not yet. Instead, she turned slowly, let go of the suitcase, walked into the kitchen like it was the most natural thing in the world. Michael watched her move, not because he was surprised, but because it felt right. That evening she was back in the nursery, rocking Leo to sleep, singing under her breath. The warmth had returned to her voice, soft and steady like the heartbeat of the home itself. Michael stood in the doorway. This time he didn't freeze. He walked in, sat beside her. Lila reached out from the crib, and he took her, careful and tender. Jonah giggled in his sleep, and just like that, they were doing it together. Weeks passed, the staff returned, but none touched the nursery. That was sacred space now. Stella didn't move out of the guest room, not right away. But she didn't plan to leave anymore, and Michael didn't want her to. One afternoon, as the babies napped and soft jazz played through the living room, Michael brought out something Stella had never seen before. A box of Jennifer's things, baby letters, crib designs, ultrasound photos, notes for lullabies. He handed them to Stella. She would have loved you, he said. Stella's eyes welled up. I hope so. She would have told me not to be an idiot, he added. She laughed. Then she leaned forward and kissed his cheek. Just once. But it was enough. 3 months later, Michael stood in the garden with Jonah on his hip, Leo playing with blocks at his feet and Lila chewing on her dress. Stella stepped out onto the porch with lemonade. Hey, Daddy, she said, smirking. He turned, mock-insulted. You talking to me or him? She laughed. You. But technically both. He grinned. I'll take it. They weren't rushing anything. No fancy declarations. No headlines. Just moments. Real ones. Healing ones. The kind you don't expect, but never forget. And in the quiet, soft corners of that once lonely mansion, love finally found its way home. Do you believe true love can survive, even when it begins in grief? Let us know in the comments below. And if this story touched something real in you, hit that subscribe button, not just for us, but for the next story waiting to heal someone else's heart.